Who outside of your particular medium or discipline has influenced your work as an artist? And I'll go first. I think about there are two people, actually. One is William Morris, who started the arts and crafts movement back in the 19th century. He was a poet, a painter, a designer, living in the Victorian age, where art was all about affluence and things were beginning to be manufactured, and he was all about craftsmanship, and that there's delight in a human person handling raw materials and shaping that material, delighting in that, and offering it to others. And there was kind of even an ethic that was involved with it. And so there was a simplicity and an honesty involved in what he did, just kind of taking the varnish off. There was an attention to detail, being sensitive to the material, the inner satisfaction, and then a tradition and a sense of place. So as I think about music and how I approach music and what we do as the indie choral artisans, is that I'm going for less is more. I'm not necessarily looking for a loud, bombastic sound as I am a silent unison that can just totally blow you over. And so kind of just stripping away some of, loud is not necessarily always good. So he's one person. And then also the filmmaker, documentarian, Ken Burns, historian. I'm so fascinated. I feel like no one can tell a story like Ken Burns can. And he makes the statement that all meaning accrues in duration. And so music is the unfolding of sound in time. And so you have to submit yourself for a piece of music. Like you can't fast track the song. Like you need to submit and to listen from start and from the middle and then to the end. And he talks about history and that history zigzags. And really, maybe now we're beginning, he's just finished a series on the Vietnam War. And he says, now maybe we're just beginning to understand about that particular time in the 60s. But even the political climate right now, he says, the jury's still out. It's too soon. It's hard to be objective. And so I appreciate when he talks about just the unfolding of a story, of the narrative, and staying alert, being attentive to that, and not rushing that, and being curious about it. So those are two people that, they're not musicians, but that have really influenced the way I think about music. This was a surprise question because I sent them these questions ahead of time and I didn't include this one. So,
these have all been really good questions. I think a couple months ago, I can't remember how long ago now, I read Johnny Cash's autobiography. I think he's done a couple, maybe two. But Cash by Johnny Cash is the one I read. And he has just become a huge hero of mine for his honesty, I think, and his determination to really press into all parts of life and to find the beauty in them. He, I think, sees that all of life is precious, and so he really reflects the ups and the downs of life, and in that, and in making music about all of that, shows that all of life is just really precious. And so that, just the idea of beauty being not necessarily found in what's easy or in what's hard, but in the fact that we're just alive, has been something that has just really struck me.
do you listen to Johnny Cash as you paint?
I do, yeah, a lot. But I also have a couple studio mates, so we have to talk about music playlists together.
Collaboration.
Collaborate.
I think it's especially wonderful to be involved in a variety of creative pursuits. so I like to play music. I'm a amateur fiddle player, and I like to see how the idea of thinking about music affects the things that I do visually, how it affects how I organize my projects, and I also love to read, and I dabble in writing, and I used to do the theater, but not so much anymore. But I think that all of these pursuits can enrich our lives in so many ways, and if you're feeling like your life is just a little bit too, one track, well, if you people are doing this because you've added this singing aspect to your life, which I'm sure has given you a tremendous amount of joy. And so if you have anything that you can do that's enriches or adds beauty to your world, by all means do it. Paint your living room an interesting color, or learn to cook one particular dish really well, or join the choral artisans. All of this is good.
This is good. It's great. Kyle, any thoughts?
So I stole this book from the hotel in Florida. I guess this is on tape now. I had this book at one time, and there was hundreds of art books there, so I'll send it back. How do you know whether something is a de Kooning brushstroke or a Corot cloud? It's all the same matter. Painting digests and destroys itself and becomes something else. So it's that idea that at any given second, it can be this elegant, beautiful, atmospheric cloud or abstract craziness. So Fiona Ray is a British artist. That was important to me. I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan. I don't know how that works in with my work, other than I like theater, I like movies that show their work, that let you in on the facade.
Like what? What are some titles?
Oh geez, what was her name? This is Chicago. Mary Zimmerman. Have you ever seen a Mary Zimmerman show? It shows how things are done, rather than the pretend. I like that in theater.
I instantly started thinking about writers. I read a lot, and I've always been a Jane Austen fan, but particularly what I like about her writing is the subtlety and the slyness of the humor, that very often it just kind of pokes you in the side and then just keeps it going. And kind of taking that aspect in my own performance, and there's a certain level of, you gotta amuse yourself, otherwise how do you think you're possibly going to amuse anybody else? And one of the shows that I sadly got known for in a certain circle was, we did Romeo and Juliet, and I had the smallest part in the cast. I was the apothecary. And they played it as the apothecary was kind of this homeless person, basically dealing drugs off the street. And one time I just had to entertain myself in rehearsal because I have like 3 lines. And so I, take off my shoe and use it as a pillow and curl up around my trash can. And all of a sudden, that's what everybody remembers about the show, because I was playing around. So it's that subtlety, it's that little thing. I'm just in the background. I'm not trying to draw attention to myself. I'm just adding this one little tiny sly poke in the ribs. So I've always appreciated Austin for that. The other side of the coin for me is Anne Lamott, particularly Bird by Bird. There's an entire chapter about first drafts of a rather poo-like nature, one will say, and that you have to have that awful first draft in order to tear it apart and get to the good stuff. You know, that you have to do the primer work, you have to get through all the yucks before you get to the actual doing stuff. So I think a lot of writers, but those two in particular have influenced me.